In this episode of Life's Rich Tapestry, episode 42, I speak with Jane Meredith, who is an author, ritualist, and teacher. Her books include the best-selling Journey to the Dark Goddess, amongst many other books. But we also specifically talk about her latest book, which is Falling Through the Tree of Life, Embodied Kabbalah. I'm sure you will enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed interviewing Jane. Welcome to Life's Rich Tapestry, a podcast exploring the narrative of people's layered lives. Listen in on courageous conversations spoken from the heart. Gain insight into another's life as we tackle compelling topics which will expand your mind, help you gain perspective, and might even inspire you to do things differently. My name is Evelyn, and I look forward to your company. I would like to welcome Jane to the show today.
Thanks, Evelyn. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah. So now every story starts at the beginning of life. So we just a little bit of a story where you were born and all that jazz.
Sure. I was born in Melbourne. I grew up in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, which was still quite bushy at that time when I grew up. And I grew up playing in creeks and used to go camping in the school holidays with my family, to forests and rivers and sometimes beaches.
Okay. And when did your love of ritual begin? Did it start at this time?
Yeah, I don't really separate it out. I think as a child I was involved in intense kind of, like both intense relating with nature and also intense kind of fantasy games and exploring. And maybe it's not ritual as such, but it's certainly got a magical aspect to it, like talking to rivers and winds and trees and really feeling a part of that wild world, non-human world, I would say, and often not really enjoying the human aspects of my life, but really enjoying being part of the living world.
Okay. And when you're part of this living world, did you feel things energetically or?
I don't really separate those things out. I had intense experiences, and I think most children do, in nature, and I wouldn't have separated that out as being different from any other experience. It's more vivid perhaps than reading a book or playing in a playground, but it's part of life. And I think maybe what I did as I was growing up is I didn't really let go of that, and I didn't really let go of my love of fairy tales and mythology, and I just didn't really let go of those things because they were so special to me. And so I kind of carried them with me from childhood through to adulthood. And I think maybe a great tragedy of a lot of our education and a lot of our world is that we're expected to leave those things behind. And many people do return to them as an adult, but maybe there's no need to ever leave them behind.
So what I want to ask is, for those people who are listening, and I introduced you as an author and a ritualist, what exactly is a ritualist?
Yeah. See, Evelyn, I'd probably call you a ritualist. To me, a ritualist is someone who creates ritual, who creates ceremonies of meaning. And could be by yourself, could be with just one other person, could be with your family, could be a whole large group of people. So it could be a wedding or a funeral, or it could be a celebration of the summer solstice, or it could be someone's coming of age, or it could be a letting go ritual. To me, I don't know, that word ritualist doesn't really exist, but I kind of took it on because I thought it's this active, this verb, the doing of ritual, the creating of it. And that's how I like to see myself. I don't really perform rituals that are set, that are written down and the same one repeated again and again and again. Like even for weddings, I would write everyone from scratch for the situation. And so that's why I called myself a ritualist, because I like creating, and especially co-creating with other people, rituals that have meaning.
And with the rituals that you create, do you throw in a lot of mythology?
I like if that's what we're doing. Not necessarily. So I just, I don't know, a week ago maybe, did a ritual for Lammas. It's a time of year. It's halfway between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. I did it with a friend in the community gardens here in Katoomba, and we created a ritual that was simple, easy to join in, meaningful to us, relevant to the time of year. I guess you could say that wheel of the year is a myth, but it's kind of a real myth, and we were much more referring to what's happening in the community gardens around us than we were to some kind of abstract wheel of the year that exists in some other part of the world.
Yeah. You've just reminded me, I didn't think of me as a ritualist, but I guess when we think of ceremony, we don't think of ritualist. Like when I hear the word ritualist, I think of something more, I don't know, maybe something a bit like fairy tale like, or
it definitely can be.
Yeah.
It definitely can be.
Okay.
But that's not the requirement.
Okay.
And I love creating and writing about rituals that do involve myth, but that's a piece of it rather than the whole of it.
Yeah, and I've read through part of your book, Journey to the Dark Goddess.
At least half, by the look of it here.
and what really struck me is the history that you've embodied in it with Persephone and all of the different myths. I don't know too much about it, but what I read in there is like, wow, this sounds amazing, really, and so deep. So you must have done lots of research for your book.
Yeah, like I never do research, Evelyn. I do is live it. Like I do read widely, and I read a lot, and I'm passionate about reading.
Yeah.
And I do create a lot of rituals and do magic work both by myself and with groups and with other people, and sometimes for years and years. Like my latest book, Falling Through the Tree of Life, which is a really thick book.
Yeah.
It took me 3 years to write. But before those 3 years of writing, I spent 10 years doing that work. And it took me 10 years of doing the work to feel like, I've got a book now.
Okay.
And similarly with the Dark Goddess or with any of them, like I do that work for years and years and years, during which time I'm reading, I'm researching, I'm creating ritual or workshops, doing work by myself, doing magic, all of those things. And then it's like it fills up to the top of the glass and I'm like, I've got a book here.
Right.
And so I just kind of live my life following my passions, doing whatever I'm into. And some of those areas fill up enough to create a book. And some of them probably never do or haven't yet.
So how would you define magic?
Wow. I guess I would define it as a way of understanding the world. Like that's what I want to go with. There's a very famous quote by a woman and author, magician called Dion Fortune, which is the art of changing consciousness at will is a definition for magic. And I mean, it's pretty well known. I've sat with that quote for a long time, and I think it sounds easy when you say that. The art of changing consciousness at will. I'll just change my consciousness by will. It turns out, of course, that there's a whole discipline, and that's not really that easy a thing to do or to sustain, but perhaps it does come down to that, a way of understanding the world, so a way of being within the connectedness, seeing every moment as a kind of living scenario that we're a part of, experiencing the world as alive and magical and moving within that space with intention and purpose. I mean, that's a very long-winded way of saying what magic is. So it's the living connections and the awareness of those and the ability to move with some intention and possibly power inside that.
And do you feel that everyone has sort of a magical sort of system within themselves, or you have to...
Like I want to say atoms are magical, So we're all made up of atoms. So we're all carrying it. And it's... Some of us have an interest in pursuing that and working with it consciously, and many people don't, and some people come in and out of it, and people might call it other things as well. I kind of like magic as a phrase, because it's really dynamic and kind of potent and a bit sparkly and fun.
Because when I think of that word, I actually think of Disneyland or Disney World, and the sparkles going around the castle.
Yeah. And I mean, they're playing on that illusion of magic. I think. And, like the powerful sensations that we might have at different times in our life, but I've certainly had them many, many times in rituals. In fact, in most rituals, I would expect to have 1 or 2 moments, some rituals longer, of like, that's real, like that sparkly fairy princess thing, like in that realm.
Yeah.
Not usually castles and and princesses for me, but a feeling of being within the living web of the world, totally a part of everything, and everything responsive to me and me responsive to everything.
No, I actually totally get that, because I feel like in some ceremonies I've had, I've experienced the moment. I don't call it magic, but maybe I should call it magic. But it is that moment where, like, wow, that was pretty cool what just happened.
Yeah.
So that's probably the same things.
I had this great experience at this ritual I'm telling you about. It was just a week ago, where there was some children there and a couple of girls who perhaps had never been to a ritual before. They were about 8 or 10. I didn't know them at all. But I happened to be sitting next to one of them at the picnic afterwards. She had been very kind of shy and quiet throughout the entire ritual, not meeting anyone's eye, not speaking, not doing anything. And I really didn't know that she was even kind of present for it. But because I was sitting next to her, I asked her, oh, what was your favourite bit? What was the best bit of the ritual? And she told me her best bit, and it was my best bit as well.
Aww.
And so I thought, well, she was actually there, because that was the moment when, for me, the whole thing came alive, and it was like really dynamic and powerful. And the fact that she picked that out, I was like, oh, so it's not just a personal impression. Sometimes these things, many people might be sharing an experience, and that can be what makes that magic, where we're not experiencing disconnection anymore, where we're feeling, oh, like I'm part of this whole greater thing, and many people having this experience with me.
Yeah, I absolutely get that now that you've explained it like that. Wow. Now, as far as magical systems, so because I've read somewhere that you were also something about magical systems.
Yeah, I'm into them.
What
is
are
a
they?
magical system?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's kind of the wild magic, just like magic is the atoms, it's everywhere, it's anything, it's the way of seeing the world. And then there's a myth, I think, could be a magical system, or mythology, a magical system, somewhere where someone or some peoples have attempted to understand it through a map or a diagram or a story. So the wheel of the year would be a magical system where there are solstices and there are equinoxes and there are cross quarters. Now that's solstices and equinoxes are kind of, astronomical events to do with the earth and the sun. But then if we bring a body of ritual into that wheel of the year and say, oh, the summer solstice, it's the longest day and the shortest night, we're going to do a ritual celebrating heat and warmth and love in our life. Oh, the opposite time of the year, it's the winter solstice, it's the shortest day and the longest night. We're going to do a ritual there about waiting for the light to be born, about going through the narrow gateway, rebirth. And then that becomes a system. And you build other things into it as well. And if you can kind of look at that system, you can live ritual through it year after year after year. You can teach someone to understand all sorts of things about their life or the seasons by going through that. But you can also use it as, for example, a way of understanding a human life. Oh, so we start at the winter solstice position. We're born. We're a new birth. Each human being is a whole new world. Oh, we grow up through the spring equinox where we're children, we're learning, it's playtime, blah, blah, blah. So you can kind of map other things onto this system of the wheel of the year. Similarly to what I did with mythology in The Dark Goddess, where there's a myth that has been written down perhaps thousands of years ago, and perhaps it was already very old when it was written down, in the case of Inanna. And that's a story about a goddess or several goddesses. But then we can use that as a system or a map of understanding things about ourselves and our own lives.
And would astrology, numerology, tarot cards, would that fall under that? Or is that
tarot cards? Definitely, and that's the only one of those 3 things I know anything about. And I'm saying tarot cards definitely because that's a limited system. Like there's 78 cards, that's it. So it's a system. And I guess astrology and numerology are systems, but they seem to me so broad and wide. They just kind of keep going and going and going. And I'm not that familiar with either of those.
Okay. So a system would have an ending or sort of
Finite in some way. I mean, I could be doing astrologers and numerologists a severe disservice. It's just not my thing. But, the Kabbalah is my thing. Mythology is my thing. The Wheel of the Year is my thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moon cycles, could be sometimes my thing.
So your latest book, Embodied Kabbalah, tell me a little bit about that.
So the Tree of Life. I mean, the Tree of Life is an image and a system and a map and an image and a mythos that exists in many, many different cultures and times and places throughout the world. And this particular Kabbalah is a Jewish word meaning, I believe, to receive. So the Tree of Life in the Kabbalistic system is a map that explains the entirety of the universe, the relationship of God to everything else, and all things in between, kind of everything, basically. Mm-hmm. And so it looks simple on the page, and anyone who's opened an occult book or a mystical book, which is not really my thing, like I'm really into pagan, embodied, feminist kind of iterations of magic, but anyone who opens a book will have seen a diagram of this Tree of Life, which is 10 circles in a strict relationship to each other. That's this version of the Tree of Life. And so then it looks simple, or not particularly simple, but it looks relatively simple, but it's incredibly complicated because each one of these circles, which are called Sephira or Sephirot, each one of them is a whole way of understanding the world, and it has a whole, like I've written, you could write a whole book on each one easily. I've written a kind of large chunk of the book on each one.
Yeah.
So the Tree of Life, I came to it because throughout all of my magical and pagan life, all of my reading, people always go, oh, yeah, and then there's the Kabbalah.
Yeah.
And I was always like, yeah, but why can no one understand the Kabbalah? Like I could read whole books about the Kabbalah. I did. And I still didn't understand it. And I was like, well, there must be some way to explain it to me outside of some occult, dense initiation system in some kind of, realm that I don't want to go and don't really believe in. So I eventually remembered, I guess, that the way that I learn everything is through the body, through embodiment, through doing things. And I drew that map out of the 10 circles on a large wooden floor in chalk. And then I walked into it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I found 9 other people who wanted to walk into it with me.
Wow.
So that we had 10 people and 10 of the Sephirot. And we started doing magic and ritual from inside it. And that's how I finally, the gateway opened.
Okay.
Kabbalah is the kind of thing you never get to the end of it. You could study many, many lifetimes, 40, 50 lifetimes, still be studying Kabbalah and still be learning things all the time, every day. But that was what opened the gate to me. So as I say, I did this for over 10 years in different versions and variations of that work, and then felt confident enough, if that's the right word, to write a book. My book is my attempt to do that same thing with the reader. Okay, imagine we've got a floor. Here we go. Like the equivalent of that in a book, where I take people in, invite people in to each of the Sephirot to have experiences and really feel what it means for them, what it feels like in their body, how this one is different than that one, how they work together to then flow into a third one, how that one is different again. For me, it's a way of understanding the meaning of life. It's a way of understanding who am I really, and what can I and possibly should I be doing, or what is the divine? How am I connected to that in any way at all? What is the meaning of that? This is kind of, for me, this explains all of that unbelievably. I can't sum it up and put it into two sentences for you. I'm sorry to say, but I have summed it up and put it into 180,000 words.
Okay, all right. I'll have to actually read that and order it at Megalong Books or wherever the books are sold. Now, I know that you offer workshops, events all over the world, or you will be offering something coming up in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, how do you get involved with these people in other parts of the world? I guess the internet's probably opened that up.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I originally got involved with those things by going there and being there. I always just created the things that I wanted. If I wanted a women's group that did magic once a month, I created one. And not all of these things worked or came off, but enough of them did. Some of them did, that I got a lot of practice running rituals, creating work with other people, being in groups. I happen to be trained as a teacher. I have a Bachelor of Education. I'm sure that helped in my understanding of like how to teach things, how people learn, I suppose. And yeah, just some places I went because I was fascinated by them, and then later I offered them workshops or whatever. Some places ahead of time, I would write, or someone would find me through someone else. And
just a question about COVID. How has that affected?
I mean, I was writing this Falling Through the Tree of Life book during COVID. I'd started it before. Usually I spend 1 year writing a book, but this book I spent 3 years writing a book, and one of them was before COVID, or 1.5 was before. So I guess I happened to be living mostly alone at that time in a slightly remote place, which was not perfect for many things, but it was great for lockdown and writing a book and gardening, as it happens. And so basically I did that very committedly. I was really passionately in love with this book, and I think that that's not true of every single book I've written. I was passionately in love with it. I was determined to get to the end, like nothing was going to stop me. I'd always taught quite a lot online anyway for many, many years, so that continued. But in fact, at some point in the grip of writing this book, I decided to teach less for 1 year, just to try and really get through this book and swing my focus back to being an author and less. I'd done 1 year where I'd done a great deal of teaching, and I just wanted to rebalance that. So I spent COVID basically on my own, basically with a computer and a cat and a garden and my book.
Wow. Must have been very fruitful, I guess. or you got a lot done, or did you feel lonely, or?
Look, right, I mean, everyone, I suppose, has got a little COVID story. So right at the very beginning, my son happens to be a journalist. At the very beginning of the pandemic, he rang me up and he said, whatever you decide to do, make sure you can do it for 2 years. And I was like, okay, 2 years, that's quite a long time, especially since I was living alone in somewhere I didn't quite want to live, a bit too isolated. And I just kind of was really severe with myself, and I thought, 2 years, wow, I better really be pretty good at this, because I don't want to come out the end of something that's gone for maybe 2 years and be a complete wreck. Like, what a waste that would be. Yeah. So I want to come out in a really fairly good condition. So what am I going to do? And I just kind of created my life a bit like a workshop, a bit like a writing workshop, but also a bit like a workshop. Like I just went like, I've been studying all of this stuff for years and years. I have every tool anyone could possibly want. I will just use them all, and I will get through this in a really solid, good way with my book written. And more or less I did.
You got the heads up from your son, so that was good.
I mean, it wasn't 2 years as it happens, but
Yeah. You're also a celebrant. How long have you been a celebrant?
Quite a long time, 15 years maybe. Yeah, at least 15 years, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah, and you just have that added on just to...
Yeah, it's an add-on. I originally did it because I run workshops and magical spaces and hold rituals. People would occasionally ask me, say, oh, I'm getting married, or we're getting married and we'd love for you to be the celebrant. But of course I wasn't a celebrant. And so really my main inspiration for becoming it was to be able to offer really magical, really sacred, really dedicated, to be able to, for someone, and that's mainly the weddings I've done, people who want a high priestess who happens to be able to do a legal wedding in Australia. Yeah. And so that is more my angle. I've done a couple of weddings that were not that, but mainly they are using, immersed in magic and ritual with people who practice that in their lives and want that in their
Okay. So you've just said people who want a high priestess. So how do you become a high priestess?
Oh, yeah. I think it's one of those things where you can never really call yourself a high priestess. Other people have to call it of you, So a priestess or a priestess is anyone who, practices magic and ritual, but especially in the context of other people or a tradition. And I guess I'm doing inverted commas here, a high priestess or a high priestess is someone who is acknowledged as having, some level of more than competency and some level of skill, and recognised in some of the worlds for having that. I just like one wedding I did was someone who's very involved in magic and ritual with me, or in some of my realms, and she was marrying her boyfriend, now husband, of many, many, many years, but they wanted their wedding to be straight looking but magical underneath. Ooh. So we had all of this magic woven through it in a way that most people wouldn't even recognize unless you were in the know, kind of thing. Oh. And like people came on and sang a song, and it happened to be, a bit of a spell and a bit of a this, like there was just all this stuff was happening. Uh-huh. And afterwards, the bride's father came up to me, but we wore straight clothes, and it was kind of looked straight. And the bride's father came up to me and he said, "Oh, I bet that's one of the strangest weddings you've ever done."
Oh my God.
And of course it was the least strange wedding I had ever done. But he could pick up that there was something unusual about it.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's interesting that you just said they dressed straight. How do you dress straight?
Yeah. So they were not, you wouldn't look at them and think, oh, they're witches. But yeah.
Okay.
They were wearing conventional wedding type of clothes and arrangements. But in that, they also, like every flower that was there had a meaning, like all of the jewelry, like everything actually was layered with meanings, which it is often in weddings anyway, but these were kind of all magical intention type of thing. Anyway, it was just entertaining to me that her dad had said this thing. And I kept a straight face.
Oh, there you go. And so you just mentioned witch. Would you then consider yourself a witch?
Like I personally have never taken that title. Other people might sometimes do call me a witch because I'm someone who practices magic and ritual. For me, I've always preferred the term priestess, or now I might say priestex as a non-gendered version of that, and ritualist. Like those are my chosen titles. And the magical tradition that I am part of, Reclaiming, does call itself, does collectively call ourselves witches. And so I guess I've got used to that word over the last 20 years or so. But yeah, I never pick it for myself.
Yeah, no, I like ritualist and priestess. I like that a lot better. I don't know the word witch you think of. I think me growing up in America.
I was going to say America. So there's a big thing in America where witch is a very, very powerful word.
Yes.
It is very powerful. It is very anti-establishment. It is very like revolutionary cry. Whereas in Australia, which is, a little kind of eccentric really, and that's about it. It means you live in the woods, in the hills off by yourself and talk to your cat. I don't know what it means, and practice herbalism or something. But it doesn't have that power and guts of what it does have in America. And in Europe, it's another thing. In Europe, there's this hereditary kind of lines of magic and Wicca and witches. So it means something different again. And I guess to me, it just didn't mean any of those particular things about me. Whereas the others spoke to me. Yeah.
No, I do like ritualist. I really like that word.
You can call yourself that from now on, Evelyn.
Yeah, there you go. So of all the things you do, because you do so much, you offer, one-on-ones and you teach people. What do you like the most about what you do? You write books?
Oh, like if I could only do one thing forever, I think I would choose writing. Like I am a writer. Okay. But right up there, running a very close second is teaching groups, workshops. And at the moment, my great thing at the moment really is the Kabbalah, because that's the system that explains everything. People have revelations, and I don't mean like 1 person out of 20 has a revelation. 20 out of 20 or 19 out of 20 people have a revelation in this work. And not just a revelation about, whatever, but like literally about the meaning of life and understanding the cosmos. So to be part of that and working with people in a dynamic way through that process, and it's a long course. Like I have taught it over 2 weekends, not consecutively, but usually I do 1 class a month for most of a year. So you're with a group for a long time. There's a lot of deepening and a lot of, the group really comes together and starts, working magic together in all sorts of ways, like formal, let's create a ritual magic, but also magic as in how people's lives strangely connect or influence each other or open up and change in some, cascading patterns type of a way through this work. So I would say that especially live, but actually Zoom is pretty good, and I really appreciate so many benefits of Zoom, people being able to be all over the world, people of different, abilities and locations, being able to join in as long as they've got some kind of internet or a phone line. So I so appreciate that, and it can be. It does have some gifts that are not present in the real world courses, but I guess my favourite is when there's bodies in a room together, creating this work and magic together. Yeah. Having said that, putting that to one side, my next course that I'm starting is the Zoom version, so live taught participative classes that are also recorded that go throughout most of this year for Embodied Kabbalah, for anyone wanting a deep magical system or to finally understand what is the Kabbalah or what is the Tree of Life or how do they
So that's for the year. Is that correct? Once a month? Or
Starts at the end of February. There's one class a month in Australia. It's on a Sunday morning. Different times at different parts of the world. And then, there's kind of various self-work, homework, optional homework set to carry through the month and, different conversations with people that you can have throughout that time. Yeah. So it's not like you're abandoned in between classes.
Okay. So I'll put all those show notes in, and if anyone is interested, and if anybody wants, they can order your book, or they can.
So you can order the book through any bookshop, as in bricks and mortar bookshop, and of course always great to support them when you can, as you did buying that one. And you also can buy it any online bookseller. Yeah.
Can we buy them through your website?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But they also, most of them, in fact, I think perhaps all of them come in some Kindle version, some e-version, and some of them are also audio. This one is audio, and the Journey to the Dark Goddess is definitely audio. A couple of them have been translated into different languages, always.
Yeah. So someone's actually read out the whole book.
Yeah, it goes for over 18 hours.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And I'm really not sure how that is. Like, I've listened to a tiny snippet of her reading, and that's delightful. But I've talked to people who've listened to it through that. So it must be there. I believe it's there.
Wow. And you didn't have any say in that? Or you just said, or did you say you want to have this book read out by somebody?
No, so the publisher decides that, basically. So in this case, The Tree of Life, the publisher decided to do an audio version of it. I was consulted on a few things of that, including the pronunciation of various words. So it's read by an American who then, the words that I gave her, of course, had an Australian accent. Yeah. Anyway, the Journey to the Dark Goddess, I was approached directly by the audio book company. So that's like I have a separate contract with them for that book. That wasn't through the publisher.
Yeah. Because I know authors can actually read their own books. So
I would have, but no, I did not get that option.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Journey to the Dark Goddess, I would have really wanted to, but no, that's not an option because like they just have a whole setup. Like that's their business. Okay. And
okay. Yeah. That's just something I just thought you would have sounded lovely reading your own book.
Thanks. And I do actually read sections of it that I put either on Instagram, little short ones, or there's some longer ones on YouTube. Where I'm reading out, half a chapter of this or a memoir section of that or a short story from here. So I love to read aloud, and I love to read my own books, especially if someone's listening. I do that.
No, I always, when I listen to audiobooks, I always love it when the authors read them because there's a different sort of energy, So
I like both of the women who I've listened to reading these two things are really fairly passionate about them, and like certainly the woman who read The Dark Goddess is an actress, and it's
wow. Now that sounds amazing. So what is next? I know you've got.
What is next? I think there's a tradition that writers never talk about the book that they're about to write or beginning to write. But I would say that I'm a writer. That's mainly what I am. I'm in the early stages of the next book.
Okay. All right.
And then wait and see.
Wait and see. Okay. No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Is there anything else you wanted to?
Yeah. I guess what I would say is that all of my work, like the teaching and the writing, yes, it's me on the page, or yes, it's my work that I'm presenting and inviting people into. But that is with the aim, with the intention of encouraging people to bring alive their own sense of magic and ritual and being in whatever world it is, whether it's a Kabbalistic world or a mythological world or a magical world. Like, that I see my work as a station along the way to people getting where they want to go with that, or finding out as they go what works for them. I'm really delighted to do that, and I really don't expect readers or participants to stop with my work. I expect them to keep going and create whatever it is they're creating.
Yeah, what a great way to end this podcast. That's so good. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Evelyn. It was a delight.
Thank you so much for joining me on Life's Rich Tapestry. I look forward to your company next time.